Hey everybody, this is Darwin Reynel, Festival Director Hospitalet, Barcelona International Film Festival. Today we have a great filmmaker from the UK. She made this beautiful word, Losing Grace. Her name is Athena and she's with us today. How are you, Athena?
I'm great. So nice of you having me on. What a delight. Thank you.
Sure. We are very glad to have your film. It's a really a piece of art, huh? Congratulations. I mean, you've been having a lot of success. So many festivals now. You know, I cannot catch up with you. Athena, tell me, you wrote the script as well. Tell me the idea. Where is the idea coming from? How long do you process the idea? How long it takes for you to write the script? Tell me a little bit about that process.
Okay, so the idea initially, so Liz Farahadi, who plays the mother in the film, so she came to me with the idea to make a short film, and it wasn't the story. It was more about the relationship between a mother and daughter, which was really interesting. And so we started to develop that, and it was in writing it that I suddenly find that actually when we started looking into what's that relationship between the mother and daughter, why do mother really want to, when can that keeping someone safe become
Mhm.
an extremity? And so at the beginning it was really like a Rapunzel story, and then when we started to push it, we then started to feel like actually in a lot of cases we see representations of women as the crazy person. So we
Mhm.
thought, what if she's not crazy? What if she is telling the truth? And that's when we discovered that inside the story was the story of abuse. And
Mhm.
I had already written a short film that never got made, but that did really well in competitions about domestic violence. And Liz also had, had been around that world as well. So it wasn't like a complete accident that this was
Mhm.
coming through.
Mhm.
So the development of it, if you like, and also creating the character started quite early on, and Liz
Mhm.
was at the heart of that
Mhm.
journey as well, and in her preparing for the role. So that's how we began. So writing it, once you do the development, the writing doesn't take long. It doesn't take long
Mhm.
to write a script.
Right.
I think what's important, and it's something that I think that in the industry we don't talk enough about, is the development of ideas. And they do take time. They need
Mhm.
the space to give it to somebody, to get feedback, to give it, and just have that sort of to and fro that allows the story to grow. And for us, it also continued to grow even when we launched the crowdfunding campaign, because that was a platform. And suddenly, here we were talking about a little film that we were going to make, but this was a story that really touched and resonated with a lot of survivors of domestic abuse, and they started to contact us. And then we were in a situation where we're like, okay, now we're dealing with something that isn't just about us making a film. This is a bit more than that, and so we needed to serve the subject matter through the story. The story needed to be always king or queen, but we
Mhm.
still needed to be truthful to that world. So yes, it was an interesting process in developing the script, if you like. Yeah.
Right. I think tell me how many drafts do you make when you got all the ideas together and you start working in the script? I mean, you process a little bit of writing the script. How was that? A little bit. Tell us a little bit.
Okay, so what I find really helps is when you're working towards deadlines. Okay, if you don't have a deadline, you never finish anything.
That is true.
So our first deadline was I think it was in the Palace. They were doing a pitching competition, and this was very early on, when Liz had approached me about the idea of doing a short film. And the story that we had then was about a cult, and it was a very different film. So anyway, we started to write that, and she went off and she pitched that because I couldn't go at the time, and we got really an interest in it. And then we came back, but the pitch was, I mean, the script was rubbish. I mean,
Mhm.
it was awful. But we were like, okay, but there is something in this. and it was that relationship with the mother and daughter. So then we did another version, and that went out to, I think it was the European short film or something, um, European short pitch. I can't remember what it was,
Hmm.
and they gave feedback, and then they went, oh, okay, so this is really great. We liked it, but it felt too we knew what was going to happen. I thought, all right, so it needs a twist, and that's when we went, oh, maybe it needs the ending needs to be truthful.
Hmm.
So really, three main drafts, and probably each draft had tweaks.
Hmm.
So each time, I mean, like, so the DP, the cinematographer,
Yeah.
Beatriz, who's Spanish from Valencia, um, she came on the project a year before we shot. And
Hmm.
so working with her, and she was so generous with her time as well. That was when we were still, I mean, you know what it's like. You're making a film. It's like
Yeah.
you're praying the money will come somewhere, and you live in this crazy world of like it's happening. It's
All
like
right.
okay, I don't know when, but it's gonna happen, and you carry people with you, and eventually you think it's gonna have to happen now.
Let's talk about, because your film is very well done. There is no doubt about that. It seems like there's a lot of preparation before. So how was the pre-production working with Beatriz? She's really great. Actually, she did another film within our festival as well, and she was nominated for best cinematography. So those guys are really checking very well her. So how was the how do you work with the cinematographer in that pre-production stage? Tell us a little bit that process.
Okay, so first of all, we meet, we see if we get on. First of all, she showed the script, she liked the script. Then we see we get on, and we and if you get on, great. So we got on. The Spanish connection was great. I mean, I'm not Spanish, but my husband's Spanish, so I speak Spanish, and I love everything to do with Spain. Um, so for me, it was like, yay, any excuse to be connected to that. And so the process was really sharing visuals that resonated with the story. So I might be watching a film and I'll take a picture of it and send it to
Mm,
her and go, oh, this is what I'm thinking about in terms of, when they're in the car or, and when I was writing the script, I wrote a lot of the visuals in there. So moments that were just visuals, and we kept talking through the story, and then we sat down and did a shot list, kind of storyboard, but we could not
mhm,
drawing in an artistic way, just really beginning to find the cinematic language that told this story. So the idea of a framing a situation was really important in the
mhm,
narrative, um, playing around with space and giving it that sense of a thriller as well. And we both liked the long take as well, and wanted to play with that. And that came, so when we were on the same page when we came to production. So pre-production is super important, and that dialogue that you have, with the cinematographer is at the heart of that. We both knew what we were looking to get, so we moved quite quickly, and we knew it was a bit risky. I mean, I don't know. I like parts of me like now would go, maybe we should have taken coverage of that scene, because a lot of the scenes we just went, no, we've got it. That's it. We don't need to cut into this. We just needed it to play out. Um, and we would move on, because we would also be thinking, actually, I've got an idea for another shot. And she would be very good on that as well. Like the shots of the mother looking out the window, they weren't in, but we needed them in the narrative, and they came out of Beatriz. She went, I've got an idea, but we have to run quick. So we were sort of working against the first AD. This is how you must never work. Do not go against your first AD. All right, but we were being crafty, because we would like
mhm.
skim a bit of time, and she would go and set up quickly. We would shoot something and come back and we go, no, we're ready. We can go to the scheduled shot. So we were like two very naughty people on set in order to steal shots, because she by this point had the story in her head, and so did I. So we weren't just shooting what looked great, it was always story, and we were
Right.
always telling the story through every shot. Like even when the last shot, which is a long single take,
Yeah.
the steady cam Luke, you know, we knew what we wanted to achieve, and
Beautiful.
he was like in it, but he was telling the story as he went through that shot. And that's,
Yeah.
I stood back and I thought, that's what you want. You want everyone in here to be telling the story, not, oh, this will look great. It wasn't about looking great. It was about why, what are we saying here? What do we want? What do we want to feel? What are they feeling? Who are we with in this moment?
Mhm.
And so the cinematographer was key.
Athena, tell me also, before we leave pre-production, also the locations are really well thought out. Huh? Wow, I love them, all of them. I mean, it's like a big budget short film, you know. How do you manage the locations? How was do you scout them yourself or you just go internet? How was that process? Because they're all well beautiful
Well, it
places.
was very funny with the locations, because what so Liz had gone to the Isle of Man. Now, the Isle of Man is in the middle of England, north of England, an island. It's in the Irish
Hmm.
Sea, this rock. It's not anywhere you would necessarily think of going to. It's not, you know, it's not
Right.
Mallorca, you know. It's freezing cold. There's a wind always around it, and it's lost in the north of England. And she had gone over for something completely different. And when she was describing it, I went, "Oh my God, let's go and make Losing Grace there." I'd never been. And to be honest with you, at that time, I didn't even know where it was. There's lots of little islands in England, Isle of Wight, Isle of
Hmm.
Man, I don't know where they are. And I had no idea how far north it was. And she went, yeah, let's do that. So we had already started saying, and because it fitted with the story, I think this is the other thing, is the Isle of Man, es como una isla perdida, no? It's a lost island in the middle of nowhere. So if you wanted to run away, it's a good place to go. You won't get found because
Hmm.
you can travel there with no passport. And while you're there, you can find new identity to leave and go to
Hmm.
Ireland, and maybe from Ireland you can go to America. And it was kind of part of the backstory
Wow. Wow.
of this character. So where would you go if you wanted to get lost, if you wanted to not be found? And that was a good enough place. So it wasn't, no, we didn't want to film it, the other place was maybe somewhere in England. It doesn't feel plausible. So the Isle of Man was plausible for the story. And then once you decide you're going to film it there, it needs to be visible that that's where you are. Like, there's no point going all the way to film it there when it looks like you filmed it in your garden and in your living room. You know, that's the other thing. So
Hmm.
we needed to think about shots that showed us that we were on an island, that it was this beautiful island. Now, we shot this in February, and it was the middle of a storm, and I think it was a case of, had we not arrived the day we arrived boat with the kit, we wouldn't have arrived for another week. So it was like
Wow.
everything, you had to think about these things, and you had to just, it's happening. If it wasn't meant to happen, we wouldn't be here. So you just believe in faith, the
Hmm.
universe, madness, whatever. And we were very lucky that I mean, it was freezing. Like it was like minus 20
Oh yeah.
because of the wind.
Wow.
I mean, it was
Hmm.
so cold. And you've got these girls in the school uniform, and then we had like blankets and duvets and hot water bottles to wrap them up because it was freezing outside.
Right.
We had
Yeah.
hand warmers, and
I saw that
it was
win. Yes.
so cold. One day that was nice was the one day we scheduled to have a boat, a drone, and the girls running through the field. And like it's the only day the winds dropped, so we could have a drone. and that we could go to the sea, because I think it was the winds were at 60 miles an hour, which
Wow.
is about 80 kilometers,
Hmm.
and it had to drop to about 40 kilometers to be able to go to the sea and do all of that stuff. So we were really, really lucky, I mean, because the sun was going down at 4, so we were filming in not the most ideal, situations for all of those reasons, but it worked. I mean, we were lucky. Like the sun came out when the camera came out.
Let's go into production. Athena, tell me how many days you guys shot the film, and what was the most challenging thing besides the cold and the wind? What else can you say was more very challenging? What do you think during the production?
It was 4 days, and what was challenging is we had lots of locations,
Hmm.
and we had one location which was the drive
Beautiful.
leading up
Yeah.
to the house, which was booked for the end of the north of the island, and that would take about, I don't know, 45 minutes to get there. But you're traveling with a big crew, and it would have taken an hour and a half. So we had to think, okay, we need that shot, need that whole sequence. But outside where we were staying, the road was perfect for that. But we didn't have a
Hmm.
license. And so we had an amazing grip who'd worked on Gremlins. I mean, this was a veteran
Wow.
filmmaker
Hmm.
who lives on the island, and he came on as our grip. He was an Australian guy, really big and butch. So I asked him, I said, right, what can we do that's safe? He goes, right, well, the camera we can do, you're allowed a meter from the car. So we could set up the car with the rig, that would be safe. And then we position cars either side, from the front and the back, and we
Yeah.
can control
Beautiful.
traffic. So we found a creative solution around that. Use a
Mhm.
road that we didn't have a license for, and we had to just go with it. And I went with Liz a few times up and down, so she got used to where she was driving, because she'd have to be
Hmm.
acting.
Right.
Um, we didn't have a trailer or any of that kind of stuff, couldn't afford it. So just she had to be familiar with it, and we went, right, you're going to go literally 20 kilometers, 20 miles an hour. It's so slow, it doesn't matter. But we had the road empty, so we were blocking it in a way.
Hmm.
So that was a thing, and we had to do that because otherwise we would not have made it if we had to travel away. So locations were a challenge because of
Hmm.
distance.
Right.
When we arrived the day before, so it was a 4 day shoot, and the day before, and this is the thing you were asking about locations. I had gone to the island a couple of times before, and we scouted.
Hmm.
We hadn't quite locked anything down apart from the school, and we were
Hmm.
looking for certain woodlands, and the ones that we had earmarked, when we went to visit them on Thursday with Beatrice and Luke, who was our steady cam, and the girls had to run. I mean, we couldn't even walk through them, so we went, well, that's not going to work. So we need to find another place. Fortunately, Marsha, who became our associate producer, our location manager, the woman that gave us the house, that gave us the accommodation,
Oh,
was
wow.
basically our guardian angel, um,
Mm.
knew the island like the back of her hands. And so she took us to a place that gave us everything. And that was the day before. Now, because it was the day before, we didn't have licenses. So we just
Hmm.
had to kind of hope that everything was okay. We did ring the council and say, actually, we're not going to be there, going to be here. And no one seemed to mind. So we 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 fixed them the day before, really. And
Wow.
so yeah, that was there was a lot of locations for a short
Hmm.
film for 4 days.
Wow. Beautiful.
Really
Hey,
challenging.
Athena, tell me, how do you work with the actor, with Liz, with Tabata? How do you direct actors? Actually, you give them freedom to bring their own taste to the, or you are very methodic. How's your approach to direct actors?
That's an interesting question. So with Liz and her role, that was an ongoing journey, and she took a
Hmm.
lot of sort of. She worked very hard on that character over the
Yeah,
course of the year,
pretty good.
and she, and we would talk about it as well. And we did a little bit of, I mean, she didn't live far from me, so we could sort of, you know, walk through things. I
Mhm.
don't like to over rehearse
Mhm.
in terms of for film. It's very different to theatre, and I think with film, I like as long as they kind of know where they're moving, the blocking,
Mhm.
if you like. I want to keep it quite fresh, and so Tabitha, who played Grace, for example, just did not give anything in a rehearsal. She held everything back. She would only act, you know,
Mhm.
give it when the camera
Right.
was on. So that I picked up quite quickly with her. I mean, she was only
Mhm.
13, so you know, you
Mhm.
couldn't. So we were like, okay, as long as she knew what marks to hit, or you know, we would play the scene out, so the crew knew the movement. We would see the movement and think about the coverage. Yes, we had it all, you know, listed before, but once you see it in the place, you think, oh, maybe actually let's run this as a single, or let's see if we can get to the end of the scene, you know, and see what that looks like, and then just follow it, and like it would be a documentary. Or so we would decide in that moment based on what we knew.
Mhm. Wow.
I think because we knew exactly what beat we were getting, we needed for the story. When you're
Mhm.
looking through that monitor, that's your test, isn't it? Am I getting the story? What is
Mhm.
I'm not getting? So maybe we did another shot to get that. So you're looking to have that coverage. Um, and so you would just see what the actor was giving you. And then I would talk with them. So I think
Mhm.
my process is to talk through the the story with the character, and then allow them to kind of see what they bring to the table. And if they're off the mark completely, that's fine, you work on it. But sometimes they'll give you something better that, you know, as long as that story's been told, that's where you'll test it. So try to keep it as fresh, I think, as possible.
Nice, nice advice. Athena, let's go to post-production, which is very interesting phase in filmmaking. How was the editing process? Who edited the film? How do you work with the editor? You allow the editor to do the first assembly, or you are with him? Tell me a little bit how's that collaboration.
So when we came back from the shoot, so this was February 2020, we came back 2 weeks later, we were in lockdown.
Yeah.
So we started the whole post-production in lockdown. In fact, the last visit I made into London up until recently was to take the drive to the editor. Um, and so I like the editor to familiarize themselves with the material, and to
Mm-hmm.
tell their story, tell the
Mm-hmm.
story as they see it,
Mm-hmm.
based on the script from the stuff, because it's quite on them to own it as well, because you know the journey is going to be a long one, and it's never going to finish when you think it's going to
Yeah.
finish. And
Yeah.
you want them to make sure they're making this film, and not to feel, oh, I've already done 2 months on this, you're only paying me, you know, nothing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I give them space for that. We had an editor on this called Eric Moore. So he was also a really good friend, and you know, he loved the story, knew about the project for a long time, and was also working within our, you know, budget restraints, which was, you know, not even a budget,
Mm-hmm.
it's a
Right.
token, go and buy yourself coffee kind of drink, money. But he was great. So he made the first cut, and we were like, okay. And then you sit with it a little bit, and then make some notes. And I bring people into the different edits, because I like to hear, like Beatrice watching some of the material as well,
Mm-hmm.
and different cuts, Liz as well, and at different points. So when I'd get it, because you know, wasn't quite working with this, and we also brought in another editor to have a look as well, and she was excellent at just asking the right questions, and that's what really gave us a breakthrough, because the scene where the girls when we find out that the dad's looking for the girl. That was quite
Mm-hmm.
late. And because we don't have a
Mm,
lot of dialogue in the scene, we didn't have it too late to find out what was going on or for you to care about. So just by moving that, and for that, there was a day when we really needed to play around with it. And for that, I went and I don't care if we were in lockdown. It just went the other side of London and sat with Eric, and we went through trying things to see. And we moved that scene. We were like, oh my God, now it works. Now we've
mm-hmm.
got the film. And then we
Wow.
knew we had the film. And so every time we got it to a certain place, we would share it, get notes, look at the notes. Whoever gave us notes was always good.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, so notes are so important. And I mean, even to be honest with you, we've changed the sound. So we did that the last week because I watched
Mm-hmm.
it at one of the festivals and realized the sound was off. There were things that weren't quite right with the music, and they weren't quite right with certain
Mm-hmm.
things. So you're always tweaking it, and that's the great thing about festivals. It's a chance to see the film as well with fresh eyes. So the
Right.
edit process, I don't sit with the editor and say, can you move this here, do this, do that. I
Mm-hmm.
don't do that, and I don't think editors like to work like that either.
Mm-hmm.
I like to um, give them space, because what they bring to the table, their creative process, is the next stage.
So, Athena, tell me, how do you decide the final cut, the last cut? Do you, besides your collaborators, you show it to another people and get feedback from there? And how good is to get feedback and how bad is to get feedback? Because in somehow it's good and sometimes also confused as a filmmaker, right? How do you
Yeah.
deal with that? And how do you decide that it was the final cut, first of all?
Um, I think you feel it.
Mm-hmm.
You do give it out, and you hear people's notes, and then you get quite good at recognizing that's a taste opinion, and that actually makes sense. So I find editors are really good note givers, because they understand, they very quickly what your material is. They understand very quickly the story you are trying to tell, and therefore they give you notes to tell that story.
Mm-hmm.
Other people might give you notes that are about telling a different story, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. That's not the story we're telling here, and that's good.
Right.
But what it does mean is the story you're telling is not clear enough. So you
Mm-hmm.
need to kind of go back and go, okay, how can I make this clearer? And so, and then you get to the point where you're not getting any notes back, and you're comfortable with it, and you've seen it in different places. We did a screening in a studio with a bigger screen, because also we're editing it like this on Zoom, which is the
Mm-hmm.
worst.
Yeah.
But when we saw it in the big screen with another editor who was, just a friend who gave us her notes, we were like, okay, now I can see, no, that needs to be clearer. We all saw the same things, and Liz also, because she was a co-producer, was part of that as well. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think, if you're the only voice that's saying no, this is it, and everyone's saying no, then you've got an ego problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think you need to listen, because an audience is going to be, this is your first audience, so
Right.
can't be like no. That everyone is saying no, and you're saying yes. No, it's not quite
Mm-hmm.
right. So
Interesting. I got a couple more questions, Athena. Tell me the music. How do you work with the music? The music was something you were having in pre-production already, or something that came in post-production? How's your approach? And also with the composer.
with this music, we knew music was really important to the story. So
Beautiful.
I contracted, and we had Donna McKevitt, who'd worked on Derek Jarman's Blue.
Mm-hmm.
So she's an
Wow.
amazing composer, and we wanted a woman composer. So I put out a call and I interviewed some amazing women. had Lindsay Wright, who'd done the music for I think the fourth season on The Crown, um, and I met Donna, and Donna resonated with the story and liked what we were talking about, and we had the idea of harpist being in the film quite early on, being part of this idea of a chorus of a witness in this space. And so went we all went on a recce in September 2019 to the, so that was composer, the DP, myself, Liz, and another producer who unfortunately had to step off at the last minute, Aradna.
Mhm.
And we all went and got a feeling for the place. So the Isle of Man has a very strong tradition of folk music, of Manx culture, very kind of inspired by the Celtic riffs.
Yes.
So Mira Royal, who is the harpist, it was like BBC Young Musician, Folk Musician of the Year in 2019, I think. An amazing talent. And so they kind of went away and played around. And Donna brought the music on board quite early on. And in fact, it was Donna's music that began to impact on how we were going to shoot certain sequences as well, and how we were going to edit certain sequences. So I mean, the stuff that she brought really early was stuff we used. It wasn't too far wrong. So it was again another dialogue. But in this project, the composer came on kind of in June, so 6 months before we shot.
Wow, beautiful. You know what? I love this lady playing this instrument. I'm not gonna spoil, but I love that idea from you. I gotta tell you that it's just perfect. You know, this lady in the stairs, and later when they we're gonna let the people watch, but I'm very good on that on what you did
But
there.
we always felt with that was going to be a little bit, it's going to
I
split
like it.
audiences. Yeah,
Mm,
it was an instinct, and I wasn't sure if it was going to work. And in an ideal world, I don't know. When I was talking with Beatrice, we were like, "God, is this kind of something that is going to work, not work?" She went, "I don't know. Maybe we can shoot scenes without her, but we never had time to do that."
mhm.
And I just had to go with it.
So my last two questions, Athena, tell me, what is the most hardest phase in filmmaking? I mean, everything is hard, but the one you need to really dedicate a lot of time and put all your brain in there, of the three phases: pre-production, production, or post-production. Everything is difficult, but what do you think is the one that a filmmaker should take it extremely seriously? Everything is
Wow, it's
difficult.
interesting, isn't it? Production is super important.
Mm,
If you don't prepare enough, then it affects your production.
mhm,
Because if you go in prepared, then you're free to invent as well and be creative on set. If you don't go prepared, you haven't got that space because you're just chasing time and losing time. And so we were super prepared, which allowed us to be a little bit more agile, and you know, and we were on the same, so it meant that we can set up tracks before we went and shot another scene, and the first AD didn't know what we were doing, but we were fast moving, and it gave us space. Like the scene when she's running across the field was because we felt we needed it, so we literally got into cars and drove off, just me and Beatrice and a wonderful Marsha who knew the island like the back of her hand. And the sun was going down so fast, and we went, right, stop here, field, run, and we just shot it, But you're free to do that because you've done your pre-production, and holding your nerve is sometimes the hardest thing to do, and every phase of it as well. It's when you think the end, and it's the sound edit, which is another journey in itself. And you start suddenly becoming aware of the most important, little bits that,
mhm.
grate with you if they're not right. So post, I would say, is the one that.
So yeah, I mean, you had, like I told you before, it's a beautiful work. Congratulations. Love the shots when the girls are running in this island and these lovely shots. The one when she's looking at the window of the car was so cinematic, very, very well done. It seems you guys did your homework, period. Then that's what we can see. My last question, Athena, are you coming to Barcelona?
But yeah, we want to be there.
Nice,
I think
nice.
it's so important. I mean, we've done online festivals and it's great.
Yeah,
But you're not taking the, if it's live, you take that time and you go, you watch all the films, you meet
that's
everyone.
right.
When it's online, I'm like listening to conversations and cooking dinner and shouting at my daughter and doing my work and it's not the way to
Yeah,
do it. So
right.
please do online. Let's just pray that it
Let's
happens
pray,
and
right?
yes,
Yeah.
we'll be there.
Whatever
We'll be there.
whatever happens, we do 30%, 20% live and whatever online, but we have to make it. And congratulations in your success. Huh?
Thank you so much, and congratulations to you. These interviews you're doing with the directors and team, it's just amazing. It's so great because I feel like I'm really getting to know the films that are going to be featured, and
Right.
and it's so lovely to start this run up. I think it's hat off to you, and
What's important for me is the connections, the
yeah,
energy in the festival,
yeah.
meeting people. I've been to many festivals and I want that. I want this feeling.
Thank you. Un
Thank you.
placer.
Yes. Un abrazo fuerte.
A ti.